Hey guys, Luke here, and today we are doing another quick and easy mod to the Tacoma, and that is replacing the breather on the rear differential, or relocating it rather. And if you click this video, I'm assuming you already know what that is and why you might need to do it. But if not, I made a whole video talking about that, as well as one big mistake people make when doing this mod, and I will link that right up here. So feel free to go check that out if you're curious. But for now, let's go ahead and get started with the install. So here's what we're going to need to do this mod. Tool-wise, we need a 10mm socket, a 10mm wrench, a 14mm wrench, and then to make for a cleaner install, I'm going to use a little hose mounting clamp. So I'm going to also use a center punch, a drill, and then we're going to use some zip ties as well for routing the cable. So I've got some flush cutters and a little impact driver to speed up the process. Now for the parts we need, I actually ordered a breather relocation kit from Yoda Shop online, and here's what's included. So we have an OEM Toyota Union that will screw into the diff in place of the factory breather. We have a hose clamp for attaching this hose to the Union, and then we have about 8 feet of rubber fuel line, 1/4 inch inner diameter, as well as a new OEM breather cap that's already installed into the line. Now you definitely don't have to order this kit. You could save a few bucks and just order the OEM Toyota Union on its own, reuse your existing diff breather because this is identical to what's already in the truck, and just go get some fuel hose from your local auto parts store. And if I were to do this again, that's probably what I would do too. You're also going to need some zip ties for routing the hose, and depending on how you want to mount the actual relocated breather, you may want also to pick up a hose clamp mount like I have here and some self-tappers, but you could probably use zip ties for that as well if you wanted. One really important point if you're going to use an OEM or OEM style diff breather for this relocation like I have here is that this OEM diff breather is actually a one-way unit, meaning it will let pressure go out, but it won't let anything come in. And I go into detail about why that's an issue in that other video I linked to, but the gist is that it can allow the diff to potentially build a vacuum and suck in water through the axle seals regardless of where you relocate this guy to. But there is a very quick and easy fix for that. Now if we just pry this cap off here very gently with a wrench, or you could use a screwdriver or something, behind it you'll see that we have, I'm trying to not let it fall out, there is a little spring and a rubber disc. And so basically what this does is the spring compresses it to where the rubber disc seals onto that little hole and prevents anything from coming in, but the spring is pretty weak, so if there's any pressure pressing on it, it'll let the disc go up and let stuff come out. So the super easy fix for this to make it a two-way valve is to simply remove the rubber disc. And with the rubber disc out of the way, we can just reinstall the cap with the little spring on there. I'm not really sure if you need the spring, but I'm gonna include it just for good measure. And it just kind of clicks back on. And now we have a two-way valve. Now, it is really important, don't do this if you're gonna leave the stock breather on the diff like where it is from the factory, because it could let water in really easily that way. But since we're gonna be relocating this way up out of the way of water, we don't have to worry about that. Okay, so in terms of where we wanna install this new relocated breather, a lot of guys either go behind the taillight or behind the fuel filler door. Both are up out of the way and fairly protected from water. I've even seen people go inside the storage cubby on the inside of the bed, but to me it makes the most sense to go behind the tail light here. It's way up high, way out of the way, and it should be a good spot. So we're gonna get started with taking out the tail light. If you watched my bed light install video, then you already know taking the tail light out is as simple as removing this 10mm bolt and then this 10mm bolt on the bottom here. With those bolts removed, the taillight's loose, and we just pull it straight back to disengage it from a couple metal clips, just like that, and set it out of the way. So the taillight's off, and I think for mounting this thing, to keep it out of the way of all the taillight wires and whatnot, I'm gonna go up here, where it'll be really nice and protected from any water, and out of the way of all the taillight wiring. All right, so we've got that all mounted nicely. We used our center punch, and then drilled the pilot hole, and then used our self-tapper to attach the little hose clamp guy there. And I have it angled all so that it clears the taillight wiring just fine. And we have now run the extra hose down through this hole in the fender, and it has popped out down here. So with the taillight reinstalled, the rest of this mod is going to be taking place underneath the truck. So to make life a little easier, I'm going to go ahead and jack it up a bit. So we've got the rear of the truck jacked up about a foot. It's just to where the rear tires are about to come off the ground, but not quite. And that'll just give us a little more working room underneath the truck. And always, 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 if you're jacking up a vehicle, make sure to use jack stands just to be safe. You don't want this thing falling on you. I also went ahead and dropped the spare tire down with the truck jacked up and that out of the way. We get a ton of space up in here where I can actually like sit up and have plenty of room to get to what I need to get to. Okay, so this is under the left rear fender. Here's like the middle of the truck. So you can see where the hose came out into this kind of fender well area, and I just ran it over to this wiring harness. All right, here's from the other side. You can see it a little better. There's where it comes in from the fender up there, and we just zip tied it to this wiring harness, which we then just followed along the frame all the way up to here. And then I'm running it down or up and around and down to the diff. I have a few more zip ties to place, and there probably would have been a more efficient way to do this, but I'm trying to keep this entire hose without cutting it, just in case I lift the truck in the future or something like that, where I need some extra hose. That way I don't have to redo the whole thing. And the one important part with hose length here is that your rear axle, when you go off-road especially, is gonna articulate and go up and down and move all around. So you wanna make sure you have enough slack in your hose to accommodate for that. And a good guideline is anything else going to the rear axle. So like this cable or these brake lines, you can see they have some slack. And we have this axle not quite at full travel, but it's pretty kind of sagged down because we jacked the truck's body up. But we're just gonna make sure to leave a little slack in this guy so we don't run into any issues. So here on top of the rear diff, we can see the factory diff breather, this little guy right here. It's identical to the one that's in the other end of our hose. So we're just gonna pull this guy out with a 14mm wrench. So this thing actually started rounding off with the wrench. I don't know if you can see that there. So instead I grabbed a 6-point socket, not a 12-point, 6-point, and I was able to get it kind of initially loosened. So if I were you guys, maybe just start from the beginning with a 6-point socket. Save yourself the trouble. So now we'll just take our little Toyota Union and thread that guy on in. All right, with that guy all nice and snug, we can now put the hose on, clamp it down, and then finish our zip ties, and I will show you guys the finished product. So here is our final product. So we have our hose all clamped on there to the Union, and then we've got the hose running up with a nice bit of slack, zip tied on up here, and then kind of going over and around with a few more zip ties holding it in place. So I'm pretty happy with this overall. I'm sure there's plenty of other ways you could run this hose. There's probably no really right or wrong answers here, but this should hold up just fine. I probably, before I totally finish up, I'm gonna just goof around with jacking the truck up, jacking the axle up, and just kind of see what this hose does and make sure it's not gonna run into any like pinching issues or overstretching or anything like that. But otherwise, we can just throw the spare tire back under here and call this done. All right, well, there's that mod all done. And while I don't plan on doing any crazy water crossings in this truck anytime soon, if I do come across a stream or a big puddle out on a trail, I know I don't have to worry about getting water in the diff. Now, if you like this video, be sure to check out that video over there where we install the OEM bed lights on this truck, and I'll see you over there.